Welcome back to another episode of Spectator Mode. I'm your co-host, Neil Strebig. With me, as always, is Donald Double D DeCray. And before we get started, definitely want to thank Evan for filling in for me last week. Of course, I'm out adventuring again, hopefully finding a home here. Well, am finding a home and hopefully, more of a
You're in
a
your
long-term
home.
home, yes, in Memphis. So was on the road getting settled, and as you can see, the bare bones of the apartment. So forgive me for not having the
The
cool
very stark walls. Yeah.
yeah, I don't have the Galaga and the Yoda anymore, so my apologies there. But I do want to call Evan out too for his little bit of bullshit with extremist views. I have extremist takes, and you're not even
I
backing
mean,
it. But like,
look,
you're just a little crazy, like acting like I'm freaking,
I said that
off the handle
I
here.
think we pandered to extremes to a certain extent, which I think is slightly the point of the show. You know what I mean? Like we're not here to be super reasonable people, because if we were, I think that would be very bland and vanilla. But some people love vanilla, so I don't know. But
I enjoy vanilla, but extremist. I was hurt. I was listening to it, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm extremist now." Like I'm like Skip Bayless or something on the mic. Like, come on,
Look,
man.
I think you're taking it way too personally, and also it's a
Wrote it in
completely
my
accurate
diary.
assessment of your situation.
Wrote it in
Like,
my diary. It's there.
look, we'll go through
Never going
today, and I'll do
away.
my absolute best to point out when you're going off the deep end, just so you're aware of it, because I
All right,
think
I'll do my best to ignore it.
complete ignorance is bliss, right? So I guess we'll go with that. No, look, if you think we're being crazy in our views, please let us know. I'm happy to take any criticism, and I'm happy to ignore it the same as Neil will. So, but, no,
No, the
truth be
comments are
told, always,
appreciated, but
yeah, always looking forward to those.
so no, you and Evan did a good job though last week. Enjoyed it. Definitely we'll have to have him back for a League of Legends talk,
Yeah.
NFT talk probably,
Oh yeah.
and we were talking about as well possibly going over kind of Last Action Hero, the presence of comic book and video game inspired source material in every Hollywood movie at this stage. But
Yeah.
potential topics for another day. What we got for y'all today, we're going to talk a little bit of Nintendo Direct that launched earlier this month on February 9th. A couple big titles there, and a couple big omissions as well from what people were expecting. Sticking with Nintendo, Crunchyroll is coming to the Switch, which is actually pretty big news because the Switch doesn't really have any entertainment presence like the PS4, PS5, and the Xbox Ones, of course. Some Battlefield 2042 news, some Ubisoft news, as always, dealing with some union stuff. I know that's pretty much a recurring topic for us, but very important and often breaking news. We got some news with Bioshock coming to Netflix, actual Bioshock movie, legendary franchise, very popular. So, going to be an interesting inclusion in their library. And then, of course, the release of Horizon Zero West. I'm sorry, Horizon Zero
Forbidden
Forbidden
West.
West.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I had faith you'd get there for sure. You gonna kick us off
Getting
though?
started, though. Yeah, I mean,
Go for it.
February 9th, Nintendo Direct launched. I think there was something like 30 titles announced, maybe more. Don't quote me on the exact number. But the big ones, at least in my opinion here, Mario Strikers. That's the first Mario Strikers game in almost a decade. Triangle Strategy launched, super popular RPG or super exciting and hyped RPG, similar vein as far as Octopath Traveler with the game style. Chrono Cross is coming. Earthbound is going to be in the Super NES. Splatoon 3, and some big DLC on Metroid Dread. And also, Mario Kart is getting 48 new courses, which is pretty damn big. That's, I think, pretty cool. Consider Mario Kart has been phenomenal.
Oh
And now
yeah.
you're adding almost 50 new courses. That's insane to me.
Yeah, and to be and like I think it's Mario Kart has been one of their staple titles for a long time. Mario Kart, Mario Party, Brawl. Well, Smash Brothers. I'm saying Brawl because that's one that came to mind. But Smash Brothers, like those are their staple party titles. I should be specific. You know what I mean? So more content for any of those, I think, is big news because they just have such a large player base and they've been so consistent with Nintendo through the game generations. I'm excited to see what the new courses are. I'm excited to try playing the new courses. That means I'm probably gonna have to come visit you to do that because I don't actually own my own Switch, which is a whole other sadness. But
It is.
which game do you think you're most looking forward to out of the releases?
Well, before that, to piggyback off your Mario Kart
Go for
point,
it.
I have to give Nintendo props for this, for knowing their audience, because there was a statistic, I think, last year, maybe the beginning of the pandemic, pretty much everybody that bought the Switch had Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey, and Breath of the Wild. So it's again, if you're talking 90% of Switch owners have that, it's been outselling, PlayStation's
Hmm.
4 and 5 and Xbox One to then add the DLC for Mario Kart. I mean, that's ingenious on their part, in my opinion. But I'm most excited about Mario Strikers, hands down. I'm a big soccer guy, and I thought that game looked phenomenal. The club mode's exciting. You did 4 versus 4, play a lot of clubs on FIFA. I think that's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. And again, Mario Tennis, Mario Golf, all of that's super fun on the new Switch. I like the layouts; they're crisp. It's good. I mean, you can, but I think for strikers, I don't know. I think it's the first Mario sport game to where I'm definitely going to go out and probably buy it and dive right into it. I'm pumped for that. And I think Earthbound and Chrono Cross are pretty big as well. Triangle Strategy, I'm curious about. I wouldn't say super hype. I like Octopath Traveler a lot, so I like that style. I'm playing through the demo right now on the prologue. I don't know. A lot left to be desired, I'll be honest with you. The
Really?
strategy
Mixed
and
feelings
everything
there, huh?
else. I think it's just, I don't mind JRPGs, but the tactical JRPGs, I think for me, there's still a bit of a bore there with sometimes the gameplay mechanics and a bit too slow with the turn-based
Very
action.
interesting.
And I think part of that is maybe just not falling in love with the characters right away. And it's again knowing you're gonna have to sit there and really go through the chess match. But it is a well-designed game. It is a lot, to like. I think I'm just not falling in love with the characters right away. So I'm kind of like, take it or leave it. But again, played an hour of the demo. Like games like
Yeah.
that usually take a while to get started.
Yeah, well, I think in the Japanese style of games, the JRPGs are known for their grindiness and some of the repetitiveness of like their slow burns as to get your skills leveled up and get collecting and get going. They're bringing a number of those titles in. I think you mentioned Chrono Cross, Xenoblade, and stuff coming in as well. I'm personally excited for some PC games, or what I have as PC games that are coming over. They're bringing in Portal, which is a phenomenal game. I think it'll be a great game to play on the Switch, especially because Portal added community maps, which adds tons of replayability to the game beyond just what the actual um, included levels are. And when we talk about like family game or like party games where you can have multiple people in there, the co-op Portal game plays very well. I think it's going to be a great match for the Switch and its abilities and stuff. They're also bringing in the entire Ezio Assassin's Creed trilogy, which I think is actually releasing today that we're recording in this present moment. So by the time this airs, that should be available as well. And I think Assassin's Creed is a franchise. It's a great franchise overall. It's had its pros and cons, good and bad, like some better games than others, but like end of the day, it's been a long-standing series, and I think the Ezio games specifically are some of the fan favorites, and seeing those come to the Switch I think is also really exciting.
You say Ezio, not Ezio?
Am I saying it wrong? I could
Ezio.
be. Ezio.
Ezio, yeah. The
Ezio.
element in Mass Effect, yeah.
Am I pronouncing it wrong? Wow, that's
It's
tough.
Ezio, yeah.
It's been a minute since I
Ezio.
played, I
It's
guess.
Eczio. Ezio.
It's what?
Ezio.
Spell it. Spell it.
Eczio.
No. It's
Ezio.
Ezio.
I think there's a C in there, man.
So someone's gonna have to correct us on this because Lord knows we don't know what we're talking about. But also coming to the Switch and moving on to kind of our next topic here is Crunchyroll is going to be available on the Nintendo Switch. I think that's great. It's definitely going to the right fans, the right market. You know what I mean? I think Nintendo being a Japanese company, and Crunchyroll carrying animes, it's frankly a match made in heaven for a lot of people. And I think one of the things the Switch is lacking is a good browser support for people who want that. It's something you do see in like Xbox and you do see in PlayStation. So hopefully we keep seeing these apps coming to sort of supplement that lack. And I'm pretty sure you have Crunchyroll. So do you think you're going to be switching? You use Crunchyroll right now on what? On your PlayStation? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a TV right now at the move, but usually I have it up on the PlayStation, and that's what
Really
I'll
living
stream
that
into
ascetic
it.
lifestyle. Very
Yeah,
Spartan of you.
yeah, I know, minimalist. That's how I roll. I move my whole life in a fiat. What do you want me to
Oh boy.
do? But
So where do you think
now
you're going to be on
usually
mostly though?
I'll probably keep it on the PlayStation, but I have it on the laptop though as well. So for me, I if I didn't have the PS4 and this would have came last year, I would have made the move with the Switch because that was my main gaming console for sure. It's just one of those things to where I have the Switch hooked up, but I definitely, when I play the Switch, it's basically just gaming out. The PlayStation's more so of I'm going to sit there and watch, Hulu, I'm going to watch HBO Max, I'm going to go through the streaming and be
Right.
more entertainment. Now, it does give me the option not to, burn the PlayStation out. So maybe I will add it just to be like, okay, let me, you know, give the PlayStation a break so it's not running for, 12 hours if I'm gaming for a while and then just, have stuff on the background. I don't have cable. So usually if I'm streaming something, or even Spotify, I'll just have that on the TV and it'll still be on basically. But regardless, though,
Mm-hmm.
with Crunchyroll coming to the Switch, I think it comes back to Nintendo knowing their audience.
Yeah.
And exactly, it's a fan base that's going to watch a lot of anime, already is watching a lot of anime. You look at the library, it's a lot of Japanese developed games, a lot of JRPGs. You get the weird kind of hentai games in there too, like bikini volleyball kind of shit. So I'm just saying, a handheld hentai portable device, there's going to be a lot of people.
See, and there you go, running off in the one direction for no reason, but at the same time, a completely valid point. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things too that's a leg up in favor of the Switch is the Switch itself is portable. You know what I mean? And so they're talking about with the Crunchyroll release that you will subscribers, Mega Fan and Ultimate Fan subscribers, will be able to download their episodes so they can enjoy them offline. So they're going to be able to take it and go. And the Switch, frankly, at least has a larger screen than most mobile devices that I think people carry around in their pockets. Whether it's a better screen because people have like OLED displays and everything else and 1080p and da 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 da, like that's arguable. But end of the day, I think I would typically prefer watching something on a larger screen for media consumption like that. So I think this might see a nice little niche there, basically for people who want to be able to watch these on the go that might normally do it on like mobile devices, instead can do it with their Switch, which just gives people more reason to carry their Switch around and invest in that ecosystem and being part of that platform.
I will say if they include it for free, like in the expansion pack, I definitely would switch and pull it off
Really?
PlayStation, everything else then, because then I could just upload for the expansion pack on the Switch. It's over to there, bingo,
Mm-hmm.
bango, boom, 100%. That would take precedence over that.
Well, we'll see, because this definitely it seems like a Crunchyroll issue right now in terms of they're limiting the offline devices based on subscriber tiers. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they conclude with their own market research.
Yeah, I mean, market research is a perfect segue.
Yeah, because what we're hinting towards is EA has released they ran a town hall basically where they looked at the release of Battlefield 2042, and what they have admitted is the failure of Battlefield 2042 on launch. And it's interesting to see EA's take on this versus what players have been saying, what consumers, what we think maybe as being on the other end of this as issues with it, because they do admit that they think issues fall into three categories of bugs and performance, game design and feature choices, and the game not aligning with player expectations. Now, I personally don't know though, like while I do agree those are the nice big categories to put things into, I think the way they analyze these is very, how would I say, they're sucking themselves off, right? Like it's not their fault that things are the way they are. Bugs fell within quote unquote expected parameters. And I guess there's some number of bugs. I don't know if that's 100 or 200 or 1,000, that whatever is within their range of, oh, this is fine for a day one release and patch. You know what I mean? Of course, not considering the severity of those bugs and how game breaking those may or may not be, and like actually being able to play the game and have an experience. It's just how many bugs are there. There's the game not aligning with player expectations and stuff, and they're very quickly and they're quickly drawing comparisons to Halo Infinite, which released shortly after, and they're kind of saying that like, oh, the reason this flopped is because Infinite dropped, pulled players away, and this, that, the other, and like, it's not because we dropped the ball on this, right? It's because the players are wrong in terms of their expectations, and the bugs were totally within parameters. And I don't know, man. This whole thing rubs me very wrong. And I'm not an investor in EA, so maybe I'm just less prone to give them the benefit of the doubt here. How are you feeling on the release?
Yeah, it definitely sounds like corporate safeguarding in a lot of ways.
Thank you.
Going in there as far as, we expected this or that. No matter how you slice it, it was a failed launch. Could they bounce back like Cyberpunk has just this week, actually, with their patch? No Man's Sky is a perfect example of
Oh,
patchwork. Witcher
yeah.
3 as well. So again, I take that, but at the same time, too, how much of it is, hey, this is a failed launch. Somebody's ass is on the chopping block, and wording it like this and presenting it in this fashion might save you a seat, or at least, save you a salary.
Yeah. And well,
Can't blame them for that, but is what it is.
do you think player expectations are wrong? Are players wrong to expect, a mostly working functional game, I guess?
I think that's a subjective take. I think it depends on the game, the hype train around it, and communication with the developers, community managers, and kind of the game's unveiling. We have seen as fans being forgiven if a game takes longer and it does meet expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, though, sometimes too, a game like Dying Light, in my opinion, watching streams of it, watching my brother-in-law, play through that, I think that game's ass. I think it's just a loot shooter and it's getting glorified as like a great game. And that blows my mind because there's nothing exciting about that game to me. It seems pretty much as long as you get a narrow hallway and just swing your club, you can take out the toughest of enemies. And to me, that's like, okay, you waited for it. If that's the game you waited for, okay, whatever. But not to get too off topic, I think with Battlefield, expectations didn't meet reality. And rather than owning mistakes or trying to fix things, and EA's done this with a couple games, Squadrons comes to mind just with kind of
Mm-hmm.
forgetting about it. They kind of just, okay, on to the next thing, which is, I kind of feel like what they did here a bit. It was just like, okay, we didn't have expectations. Maybe we'll figure out on the next one. We tried some new things. We got some feedback and kind of just kept it going. But what happens then is you lose fans and you lose an audience and you lose people that are going to buy the game. So I think for each game and title, you can't really take an objective take and say, hey, yeah, this has been the fundamental things on fans and players versus developers. I think each game is different, and we're seeing that because there's a lot more things involved, and the games are changing how interactive they are as well.
Well, see, I think maybe I'm going to be the one going more extremist on this in the sense of like the customer is always right in matters of taste, as the full saying goes, right? And the idea that like their expectations were bad, I don't know if that's possible, really, right? Like you can argue the company itself should manage expectations better, communicate better what they're producing so the players know what to expect. But at the end of the day, the players decide what they want, right? They're hopefully going to speak with their money. I think one of the things that I will speak strongly on all the time is not to pre-order things because of issues like this. Hold your money, don't pre-order until things release and actual reviews come in and actual players get in there and start stress testing and seeing things. Because a lot of times I think I agree with, at least I think you're making the point a little bit of like, hey, if they make their money in the initial release, there's not much reason to really go back and fix those issues or to stay with the game for a long time to patch it and improve it and everything else. Like you really got to care about your reputation, and EA doesn't, like they're big enough now to not really give that many fucks. They can get away with it. They're going to make their money on other titles. Like they can have a flop here and there and like it's not going to be great, but like whatever. I don't see that level. Like No Man's Sky was a passion project for the creator. You know what I mean? CD Projekt Red positioned themselves in the market as being very player oriented with the Witcher franchise and the way they handled that. So like, I still think they haven't really lived up to the way they hyped the game, but they've definitely provided ongoing support and they have had a major patch. So it's definitely something that they're still working on improving. But like, we're also talking about unplayable, like an unplayable game. People clipping through walls or maps or just like out the bottom of the map and falling. You can't play that. Like, I don't care if it's within the number of bugs expected kind of deal. That's an unplayable game. It's one thing if like, it happens like very rarely in extreme cases or something like that, minor issues. But when you have them as widespread in a game like this where it's competitive, you know what I mean? Like if you're trying to get online and do any kind of competitive play and hits aren't registering, you're clipping through walls or people are using wall hacks and stuff to like get around things, like you're ruining the competitive environment. Is that an issue of player expectations, or is this like, oh, there's some bugs that are acceptable bugs of like, yeah, we understand things aren't going to be perfect, especially in, to your point, games of this size, changing expectations and technology, things are just constantly expanding. There's going to be those types of bugs, whatever. But then there's the bugs of like the game doesn't serve its function. It's a competitive game. It's meant to be a battlefield, as the name implies, and you can't do that because the game's in an unplayable state. So I don't know. I think I don't give them as much understanding. I agree to your point at least that like it depends on the game, you know. And as far as I'm concerned, EA is a very large studio. They've been producing Battlefield games for a very long time. I think it's fair to hold them to a high standard. I think it's fair to have high expectations of them. And when they don't live up to it, I think it's fair to criticize them for it. So at least in their case, I think the criticism they've received is completely justified. And that's where I stand on it. Another company that's been getting a lot of flack from us recently is Ubisoft. We've spoken about their move with NFTs, giving employees NFTs. Exactly 200 days ago, I should say, 1,000 current and former employees basically formed a non-union, but a pact, you could say, to try to get Ubisoft to improve working conditions for their employees. Sexual harassment, misconduct, discrimination, frankly, all the issues we've been hearing about various video game publishers in the industry. Blizzard and Activision we've talked about in the past on the show. And after 200 days, what have they got to show for it? It's a big fat pile of nothing. And to me, that's almost crazy. Like, I'm laughing because it's like the futility of this, the ridiculousness of this, right? That you have literally over 1,000 people telling you like, hey, there's an issue here. Like, you should care and try to fix it. And they're just not concerned at all, it seems like. I don't know.
Yeah. What the article you shared with me said, what, 71% of employees said they feel like they can be themselves, and then they're upset because the other 29%, there's no real acknowledgement there, and it's kind of like, why don't they feel like they can be themselves at work? Inclusiveness, acceptance, definitely is alarming. 71% is better than a lot of companies, no matter how you slice that. But that's still, again, has to be, you want it to be closer to 100%, no matter what.
And I think
but
it also depends why, like, when they say they feel comfortable being themselves, it depends like what aspect, right? Like, if I'm being discriminated against because I'm, a white supremacist and I don't feel comfortable expressing that side of me at work, that's one thing. If I feel discriminated against because I'm trans or gay and I can't express that at work, that's a different issue. You know what I mean? Like, there's a different problem of inclusivity there, and like what sides of someone is like appropriate to express at work and feel comfortable with expressing at work. Because some things, you just shouldn't have to hide.
No, I agree. And to your point, though, what you were getting at with them not doing anything, I think where this falls, and we've seen a bit, not so much the union busting, but it's a tactic, though, to basically force and pass. And then it's kind of like, okay, people might move on. And then you get somebody else in there that do the same job, is eager, likely pay them a little bit less than, a veteran employee. It is a tactic from a corporate level. So is that them kind of doing this as well and kind of seeing if they're going to punch themselves out, try to push for an impasse and just kind of keep it going and be, stagnant in what they are willing to compromise for? It's going to be interesting because as much as we talk about the union busting and work conditions and developers and video game industries, the great resignation, it's one of those things too, to where how is that going to impact? And again, you're going to see people leaving the industry then too. And how does that ultimately change things up? And I still think there's quite a few companies out there that really don't take it seriously because they haven't really been forced to. So, we are going through a socioeconomic shift there in that regard, and kind of what that means between employers and employees relationship, and really it's not so much of who controls the battle. It's kind of, again, the equality of it. And for a long time, employers have controlled it an unfair amount, and now they don't see that much leverage anymore. And that's a scary thing for them.
Part of the issue here, though, or at least one of the questions that I want to pose to you and get your take real fast, is do you think it's even possible to affect change? Like, we're hearing about it, but for me, this feels a lot like the issues with Hollywood, right? The abuse of actors, child actors, women, men, all of them. Like, it was an open secret for many years what was going on behind closed doors in Hollywood, what it took to get famous and get backing, blacklisting, Me Too movement. it's not like this is something that hasn't been known, but I think Hollywood, for its part, has been largely unchanged by the scandals. It appears in the news, we talk about it. There's that
I think
discussion, but like it still makes money and things just keep rolling along. And I like, do you think video games have gotten to the point that they're a large enough industry that for the most part they have the momentum, that inertia to not
Well, I think
change?
that's part of the problem, and what we've talked about with these mergers, and part of the reason I think you and I are both a bit worried. Change, no matter what, at a small level, at a micro level, is easy. If it's just me and you trying to change the show and dynamic, it's just me and you, we can change that. It's a conversation between us. Say we expand that to a team of 15 people, still very easy. Gets to 100 people, gets a little dicey, and is going to be breaks in communication. With this, then you're talking, it isn't just a team of say 60 to 300 people working on one game. Yes, you might have that on that one game, but then you have multiple titles, fractures of that team going in, and different issues for each of these titles, and under an umbrella that's controlling thousands of employees. So good intentions or not, it takes a lot for that change to happen. And yes, you're going to need whistleblowers to alert something like Activision Blizzard, where things are fundamentally bad at the root of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely, you need that, and that's impactful, and that's scary to recover from, for sure, from a business standpoint, even for the employees and especially for the victims. But what does that change look like? You don't know. And I think for the gaming community right now, I think for a long time, you had that at the micro level. You look at, what Atari did at Silicon Valley, and basically creating Silicon Valley and being a haven of outcasts and rejects of like, you want to smoke pot and design a video game? Knock yourself out. All we're talking about is designing games. And then that's what happened. And Atari launched video games then, and, Nintendo had some of that bit more structure and everything else, but that's what that started. But again, as a micro level of understanding, and the larger you get, the tougher it is. So I think what we need to see then is, even from a title to title perspective, is a positive reinforcing workplace culture, to where hopefully that leads to change across the board. I don't know if you're going to have somebody come in just at Ubisoft or Activision Blizzard and, roll with an iron hammer as far as inclusiveness. Everybody's happy, because no matter what,
Oh yeah.
there's still going to be people upset. And again, if you're living in a toxic workplace too, that takes a while to heal. If you already are pissed off and angered, it's probably not going to change until you get out of there. So that's also the opposite side of things.
Yeah.
As an employee, you have to look at it as, hey, are you noticing change when it does happen, or are you just pissed off because you've been in this shit for so long?
And like, I'll give, at least I think it's worth pointing out, Ubisoft has made some changes. They've instituted anonymous harassment reporting. They've updated their code of conduct. There's compulsory anti-sexism and anti-harassment training now. To me, that feels very like 1950s of like, we didn't realize this stuff wasn't okay. And so now all of a sudden, we're being told we can't do these things, and kind of behind the 8 ball, but like, I guess better late than never. And to your point of like, I guess some progress is laudable. At least it's going in the right direction. I don't know. I'm the doom and gloom guy. I don't know why you got flamed for being extremist when I'm the one always here talking about how everything just is horrible in the industry and sucks.
I think because I say things like handheld hentai on the Switch and Crunchyroll.
Well, tell me something good, please. Give me some good news.
Well, I don't know if it's good news. It's
oh no,
entertainment news. But no, Netflix announced that with 2K Studios and Take-Two, the long-awaited Bioshock movie will be coming at some point in the near future. No writers, no directors, no real cast yet, but the movie is in development, on its way. Should we be excited about this? Should we be nervous? Video game movies have okay. Not right away now.
I'm gonna be very firm on this, actually, because there's a fundamental issue that Hollywood has not yet figured out properly how to adapt video game storylines to the big screen. And the most recent example of this is Uncharted, right? This just came out. Critically, I think a flop. Financially, I think a flop as well. It did not do very well. And the thing is, it's crazy to me almost that you fail the landing on this, because the Uncharted franchise is meant to feel very cinematic. You are an action hero in those games going through, and it's almost a movie told in game format, like an interactive movie kind of deal. There's set pieces going on, cutscenes and stuff like that. Like, it's very much, I think, as close to being a movie in a game as you can, and they still flub that, right? And like Bioshock, for its part, a lot of the game's appeal for me comes from the ambiance. It comes from like the little things in terms of, the thing, like the kind of like hidden things you can find, the story. There's like all these like, little like messed up things in different places that aren't immediately obvious, but people going through games explore every nook and cranny, as we know, pack mule everything and really dive into it. And I have no confidence that they'll be
Wow.
able to translate that ambiance effectively to the big screen, because I think they're going to hit the issue of, do we make this a horror movie? Do we make this an action movie? And they're going to end up not succeeding in either, because they're either going to go too action, they're going to lose the sort of darker tones and everything else that make the movie like feel heavy and emotional for players. I think that you get invested, in the characters and in the storyline. It's going to be too action, or it's going to just be like a freaking horror movie that there's not going to be any, like, it's going to be a bunch of jump scares and stuff like that, which I don't think is what the game's about either. Like, it's not a horror game. That's a
That
distinct
morality,
genre,
yeah.
and it's different. So my take,
The warp around.
it's gonna flaw. It's gonna be bad. That's where I'm at. I'm gonna be honest with you. I have no faith whatsoever.
I'm more excited about it. I think you make a good point as far as I need to pick,
I asked for good news.
their
This is what you give me?
I know. But I do think you're right. They have to pick, is it going to be an action movie or is it going to be a horror movie? Because Bioshock is that kind of work morality. It's a survival game first and foremost. And it's kind of, what do you have to do to survive? But then still, how does that question your morality and still doing the right thing, even though you have to kill somebody to survive?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of elements in that game too, to your point, like the shotgun scene still to me is one of the top 5 best scenes in all of video game history, period. How do you recapture that then in, the film? And also too, does it even need to be in the film? I think that's a part, to your point on Uncharted and what I've read with reviews. This is where fandom is toxic and gets bitchy. Like, because Marky Mark's not an old guy, he shouldn't, like, he's the wrong role for that. And it's like, who cares? It's a movie adaptation. Yeah, Mark Wahlberg always is kind of playing Mark Wahlberg in every movie, but
right.
It is what it is. Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, you can't have it all. So I think in Bioshock's case, I think it's going to be paramount for them to, as you said, make that decision of, is it going to be a horror or action. I think, the former is the way to go with the horror scene. But then what scenes in that are most important? How do you bring out the big daddies? How do you deal with the little sisters?
Yep.
Are you going to go through, 40 minutes of that kind of backstory, which ultimately you could. If you could make a Bioshock movie that just explains basically them building Rapture, and then you can go into a sequel that's just a horror movie. And I mean, Netflix, you want me to be on a writer, feel free to contact.
Well, right, because that's kind of the issue, right? Because in the game you come in as Jack, you are uncovering a lot of these plots and things, and at the same time you're still fighting for your life the entire time. So I mean, I just don't think they're going to be able to really stick the landing. And I think I'm happy that it sounds like they're talking an R rating. I think it needs that to deal with the matter.
100%, yeah.
If they're going to have any attempt at being true to the material. I also agree with your point that I think fans get really committed to certain things, like the look of characters, for example. That's not one of my criticisms for the Uncharted movie. Like, go with younger actors. You're hoping to make this a multi-movie franchise. You want people that are going to be able to be there and lasting. I know people wanted like Fillion and stuff in there. Like, I get it, and maybe they could have acted it. I don't know, but I don't find the choices inherently bad in and of themselves. My issues mostly are centered around the way they told the story, and I just think they did a poor job of it. And to your point with Bioshock, it's kind of a complex story. Like, there's a lot of backstory and stuff in there. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know that it lends itself to movie narrative fashion for uncovering and learning as you go through it. We will see. So you gave me something. I'm going to try to return the favor, because I think you're actually the one who got me into Horizon Zero Dawn. You're the one who told me about it. I bought it, played it, loved it.
On
DLC.
this show,
yeah, actually, literally, it was literally through this show that you made the recommendation. And Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel, is coming out. It's got its IGN review, 9 for 10, a solid 9 for 10, and it's looking real good. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm pumped for it too. Honestly, I didn't know it was going to be in the PS4, so I have to get that once I get a TV. I thought it was a PS5 exclusive. So
Nope, they're going back to PS4s. Yep.
what I've heard and what I like about this one so far is the exploration part of it. They've really fine tuned. It doesn't feel as repetitive, which I know we talked about. The first one,
Hmm.
phenomenal game, lots of fun, but it did seem repetitive at a certain point. It kind of was like, okay, kind of that fetch quest kind of mentality in some regards. And them streamlining that makes me very excited. I mean, I'm pumped. I mean, I like the first one. I like to see where they go with this one. And I like to see the new combat system. I think adding new weapons in there, adding hopefully better outfits and armor as well. As long as all of that's streamlined, yeah. I mean, for me, I'm probably gonna be 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 as well. It don't have to do too much more. It's really just polishing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the game for me hit a lot of really good notes overall. I enjoyed the combat system. It was one of those, once I had a deeper understanding of it, though, that it was abusable. Like, specifically, like the tripwires, for example, you could just stack them all up in one wire, for example. They walk over it, trigger 10 or 15 traps or whatever the limit was at a time. That can down Thunderjaws. You know what I mean? And when I figured out that I could just stack up traps like that, some fights became trivial, right? Because I could look where they're patrolling or whatever, and I could just do that. So I hope they add a little more depth to the system. I hope that it's not quite as gamey in that regard. It looks gorgeous. Like
It
the
does.
screenshots, even from like the earlier screenshots we saw to the stuff that like has been coming out more recently, it's just getting better. I love that because it's definitely a game that I got immersed in the first one playing. And the first one did feel very lonely to me. Like a lot of the characters that you're doing these side quests for and stuff like that, they appear for the side quest and then they disappear. There's not like quest chains, where you could really maybe delve into those stories a little bit or form connections with those characters. They don't come back later on. So you get like this, oh, this is really touching. My daughter's missing. Like, help me find her. Or like, my clan's suffering. I need to do X, Y, Z. And largely it's inconsequential because they're there. You complete the quest and then it's gone. I do like that it sounds like they're adding more constant companions, like characters that will be with Aloy through the story. So all in all, everything sounds like steps in the right direction. I'm excited for that. I wish we had talked about this earlier. This is putting me in a good mood, though. I'm happy that this might be the last thing we're
Well, we
talking
finished
about.
on a high note. That's the thing.
There you go.
Be in a good mood.
But it's nice to have you back. I'll be real honest with you. Not having you last week threw me off quite a bit.
I can tell.
Well, yeah, I think it might have been obvious to anyone. I'm not the one who usually does the intros, the introductions, and everything else. So
I make it look easy, my natural charisma.
Look, I'll give that to you for sure. But happy to have you back, Evan. Appreciate your help stepping up last week, that we were still able to produce content during the move. And to everyone else, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully we'll have another one of these up for you next week, looking at other things going on in the nerd world with hopefully more feel-good stories and less doom and gloom, sexism and hentai than we had this time.
I gotta put a hentai counter in now.
Oh,
Every
no.
time we say it.
Oh, God. Well, and on that note, we'll see you next week.